is the Mint InstantFlex TL70 Plus camera. So I've had this for a couple of days. I've tested out. So this is my review of this camera, and let's get into it. Hi, my name is Lulan. Let's talk here about cameras and photography in general. So I've just purchased this twin-flex camera. It's actually not a twin-flex camera, it's actually an InstantFlex camera, but looks like a twin-flex, like Rolleiflex and a bunch of others, that has a very vintage, dual lens design. It is a very solid camera. It has a pretty good weight. Previously, I've been aware of the brand called Mint. I never really purchased any camera from them because previously I've had this camera, which is the TL70. But then the problem is that that camera only produced a photo that is the smallest one of the, I think it's a 2x3 version in Instax film, which is too small for me to find any utilization of. This one actually produces the square-ish look. It's far more useful for the utilization of images. The design of it, I think it's pretty good. It does feel a little bit more professional. It doesn't have that toy-like feel to the camera. If you look at the side of it, it does have things like aperture, which you can manually change, shutter speed, and of course focusing ring, allowing you to look at where you're focusing on. On the top, it does have a magnifying glass that allows you to look into and peek into it like this to really see where your focus is, and using the side knob to really see if you're focusing on the right thing, which does look kind of nice and it's fun to use. I love it. I love the idea of that. They did mention in their website that this is an OLED screen, but I don't see really any OLED here. I don't know if they're talking about like the small screen on the side or something, but anyway, it doesn't seem OLED to me. Overall, the build quality is pretty good. I've tested a few Instax film on it, and it does seem to work pretty well. The only downside that I would mention, it does come with a ability to add a remote trigger, which I happen to have from my field camera, so I just thought to take a use of it. It does seem to work pretty well. So this camera does have a built-in light meter that is able to actually tell you whether or not the photo is overexposed or underexposed. But the only thing is that it does not do that very accurately. If you have something of range around 2 stops to 3 stops, it's able to tell. Within that, it doesn't really tell very well. And the other thing is knowing that the light meter basically does not work anymore if you turn on the flash. But what I found is kind of surprising is that when you actually put on a remote shutter for this camera, you can still half press it and still see the light meter readings on your camera, which is really helpful and does give you extra vintage vibe when you're taking photos with this camera. Now the only downside after use is, I think, the fact that it has a flash in the front which gets triggered out of this, but the flash is kind of small, and if you are photographing in a location which is fairly dark, then you kind of have to have a full flash on, but you cannot actually control the flashlight. So basically, if you test it under 1/25th of a second with a full flash for any photos, you kind of have to stay within that 1 meter range to photograph. If you stay above or beyond that 1 meter, the subject basically won't be well illuminated. I've taken some photos here. You can actually take a look. The that, but when I'm standing a little bit further from the camera, I do not get the flash. I think the flash is basically not powerful enough to reach out, to further expand itself to illuminate a bigger subject. Now that is also possible when you have more than one subject, or you have multiple subjects, obviously standing a little bit more distant, then it does not really be able to, in theory, illuminate all of them. So I feel like that's kind of a drawback. I do think that potentially I could use a trigger of another flash to trigger by this flash, but then the problem lies is that if you have one hand holding the remote trigger, another hand holding this camera, then you don't actually have another hand to hold another flash, unless it has some kind of built-in flash over here that can be added on or something, but it does not have that kind of function. So I'm assuming that it really is built for daytime use most of the time. This can be used more field flash. I don't really think that this would be super beneficial for doing nighttime photography or anything. If you want to create I would say those old Hollywood look when your subject's being illuminated by the flash, and everywhere else you see a darker sort of look to those photos. I don't think this camera is really built for that. The only thing that I think that I noticed is that there is a little bit of a light leak, particularly on the sides. But if you see in a very dark image, you can actually see a little bit of illumination and light on the side of those of that image, but that is not present if I'm using another camera of Instax camera. So I don't know if that's something that is fixable, or maybe just this stock of film has been exposed kind of unevenly before I actually used it or opened it. But that's generally a light leak that that needs to be resolved. Otherwise, your black will never be as black, or vice versa. So overall, how do I feel? I think this is a fun camera to have. This is especially, I think this is especially fun for anyone who is planning a party, or anyone who wanted to have a family day out. I think everyone would enjoy capturing using this kind of cameras. It is certainly fun to look at the viewfinders that get confused how to actually look at it, but it is certainly more fun for people to try things out and have fun with this camera than your iPhone. And then obviously it is obviously a very expensive camera to have. This is nearly around $800 to purchase. Certainly not a pro level camera. I wouldn't use it for any professional shoots or anything like that. This is more of a fun camera to have. Again, it does have features that I believe it's catered towards people who are a little bit more pro, have some knowledge of photography in general, but I don't think that this is in the realm of professional level, or it does expand to anything that a professional photographer would do or use. But ultimately, I think it's a fun camera to have. I'm planning to hold on to this and see how if they have any improved version of this in the next few years. So that is basically the story of this camera. Thank you for watching. Like and subscribe to this channel, and I'll see you in the next video.